The other thing I will say is you've somehow talked to me about the fact that the Quran as a literary document is different than other literary documents. And you've given some arguments, and I understand. What I actually did this the other day because I've seen you give this talk a gazillion times. I actually input in a computer a lot of Arabic words and asked them to produce it at random, and I produced 2 sentences from the Arabic from the Quran in 11.6 seconds. My computer speaks neither Arabic nor is Arab, but produced those incredibly divine words. Now, the other question, of course, I would have is, and this is a common sense question, is why did God choose Arabic, or Aramaic, or Greek? I mean, doesn't he speak English? Or the Americans always think he does, which is why they invented the Mormon religion. So the question I want to ask is, what makes sense is to ask not the details of the Quran, which I don't want to dwell on, because it's just one of 1,000 different religions, all of which make the same claims, and all of which, if you look at them a priori, are equally ridiculous from a priori common sense notion. For example, and I got this from my late friend Christopher Hitchens, is it sensible to assume that humans evolved in their present form somewhere between 250,000 to 1 million years ago? So you have a God who creates a universe and has 4.5 billion years of life evolving, and then Homo sapiens evolve and live in incredibly awful conditions for 250,000 years, and suddenly, in the middle of the desert, in a cave where no one can see it, he takes some poor schmo and says, I'm going to tell you the truth. And not only that, I'm going to allow you to save humanity. And in fact, if people don't believe you, they're going to go to hell for eternity, and we can talk in great length, in great sadomasochistic length about the torture they're going to have, and we can all enjoy it. Now, what about all those poor 250,000 years of people, of real people who were struggling to exist and survive, those poor people who were existing before that God decided to give his revelation to Muhammad? Why that? Why would a sensible God wait that long? And of course, the interesting question you have to ask is, why are the revelations always done when no one can see them? If you're asking a court of law, you'd say, well, you know what? It just doesn't make sense. Why don't once it doesn't call down from the sky so everyone can hear them? Why is it always given to people in private who then claim they've had a revelation? Now, why should I believe Muhammad's revelations any more than anyone else's? In fact, there's a young woman in the United States, in my country, who, as you know, had a revelation. You may know this. She had a revelation. God told her to drown her 4 children in a bathtub. And she did. Because God told her. She heard it. She heard it. She had a revelation. It was real. She heard words of incredible harmony and beauty that she'd never experienced before in her life, and she drowned her 4 children. Okay, now she's in a mental hospital for good reason. Because there's no evidence. That a sensible person would believe to suggest that God was telling her to drown the 4 children. Now, let me ask you, do you think Sharia law should be instituted?
Oh, it depends how you define Sharia law. Do you know anything about Sharia law, sir?
Well, I was going to ask you about it.
I will teach you in the next round.
Okay, good. Do you think, for example, that blasphemers should be punished?
Blasphemers meaning?
Maybe if I say, let's just say, and forgive me, let's just say I say that someone who married a 9-year-old girl is a pedophile.
Yeah.
And maybe that person is a prophet. Is that a blasphemer? Is that worth being punished for?
Well, I think you should be educated first and foremost.
No, maybe I'm not saying it happened. But let's say I said that, I made that claim. Should I be punished?
In a court of law with justice, there will be a form of punishment, yes.
Okay. So what about if I openly questioned the existence of God? In fact, said openly and preached in a room that there's no God. Is that worth punishment?
This is full in our history. We don't have a problem with intellectual debate and dialogue.
Okay.
I even mentioned the 8th century Dahriya.
So if I say that Allah is not God, but Thor is God, and people should worship Thor, and I go, and that it's not blasphemous.
Well, it's wrong and it's
Okay.
childish, but I will have a discussion.
But it's blasphemous to suggest. Is it blasphemous to suggest that Muhammad isn't a prophet?
Well, from an Islamic perspective, but you have to understand there's a difference between public intellectual discourse
Okay, so
and
great,
being
okay.
deliberately rude.
Okay, well that's
But we're all
great.
for intellectual discourse as per this big debate.
Oh, but you say I should be punished if I suggest Muhammad was a child molester. That's
No,
what
no,
it
no,
comes
I wasn't saying that.
Didn't you say that?
What I'm saying is, in an Islamic law, for instance, if you were to speak about something like this, and you would be taken to a court under certain conditions,
Then I would be punished.
there may be a punishment, but generally speaking, it would be more edifying and educational.
But should there be punishment? That's what I'm asking you. Should there be?
Oh, you're asking me if there
Yeah.
should be punishment? I think we should follow God's law, of course.
So there should be a punishment.
I think there should be a punishment if you're deliberately harming anyone else.
For openly questioning.
Well, John Stuart Mill
For
had the
openly
same
questioning or
opinion.
Openly ridiculing.
No, there's a difference. Don't straw man my
Okay,
positions.
let me take a more clear example.
You're straw manning my
Say you're a
positions.
homosexual man
Yes.
and you have sex with another homosexual man. Should that be subject to punishment?
In the private home, it's outside of the Sharia law. If they did it in public, which doesn't even happen where you're from, then there's a different story.
What would the Where am I from? Where am I from?
Well, you are from the United States of
Oh, I
America.
see. And so it doesn't even happen in where I'm from. Now that's rude. But in any case,
How's
but
that
it does
rude?
but the good
I
thing
thought you
about
were
it
an
is
empiricist.
It does happen where I'm from.
All the stats.
So two people
you know.
in Arizona are out in the desert having sex because they really get turned on,
Yes.
and they're both men,
Yes.
and they have sex together.
Yes.
Okay, is that punishable?
If there's no one in the desert, no, it's not.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Is homosexuality wrong?
In the Islamic tradition, it's a sin.
Okay, now here's an idea of why common sense should tell you that Islam, like many other religions, is not common sense. Because of course homosexuality is perfectly natural. In all animal species almost it's natural. It occurs with a 10% frequency. Okay? In fact, there are good evolutionary reasons for homosexuality. So in that sense, there's no reason and a fundamental... Why would a God who thought it was a sin make it natural among all species? I don't think the sheep, by the way, which 10% of sheep are long-term homosexual relationships. Okay? Why would a God who thought it was a sin create sheep who don't have a soul, who aren't able to think about it, be homosexual? That's the kind of nonsense that we have to ask, and the only way we can determine if it's nonsense is by looking at the world around us, not by deducing it, not by listening to the words of ignorant individuals and Iron Age peasants who didn't even know the Earth orbited the sun. Wisdom and learning comes from observing the world around us, and we shouldn't take our wisdom from people who didn't even understand the way the world worked. Thank you.
How long does that...
Professor Krauss, thank you very much for your presentation on the atheist worldview.
It's not a worldview.
I think
repeated
it was actually more like a dialogue, nice to chat between you two guys. Actually,
Yes.
I was wondering whether I should jump in and stop you guys. You know. Anyway, I'm sure Aristotle and Plato did the same thing. But now we've got something to sort of come back on from Professor. He's given a lot of food for thought, and no doubt Hamza, in about 10 minutes,
Yes, thank you.
Possibly come back and answer some of those contentions brought up by Professor Krauss.
Thank you very much, Professor Krauss. Audience, first and foremost, I think most of what he said was a red herring. A red herring is this very smelly fish that you pull across the path of running dogs. And the reason it was a red herring, because he said that I spoke about science. I specifically said he knows better than I do. I specifically didn't use it as my key argument for the finitude of the universe, and he wanted to correct me on something that I didn't even mention myself. This is what you call, not rhetoric, not intellectual argument, it's what you call sophistry. It's rhetoric with crap, frankly. Now, and I'm not saying it to be rude, because it's a typical Kraussian fashion. A Kraussian fashion trying to win over the whole audience, make a hoo-ha in the beginning. And you know, imagine I did that when I walked into, one day I had interfaith dialogue. And imagine I walked into a Jewish mosque or a hall that was public, and I basically said, I don't want to do things your way, but I want to discuss with you, but I'm not going to do things your way. Is that tolerance? Is that how you connect with other people? He wants to know about our tradition, but he won't even ask them, why do you have this? And another straw man, justice and equal rights. You think they're saying that because they don't have any justice or equal rights? My wife is up there, ask my wife. What's the matter with you? See, these presumptions from Fox News, you're an academic, but when you talk about Islam, it's based on the Fox News narrative, and I'm going to expose this in a minute. Now, the first point I want to make. Now, you used the word a priori more than 3 times, but you rejected deductive thinking. I mean, isn't a priori deductive? I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it, sir.
I tried to talk on your level.
That's the first point. The second point I'd like to make. Actually, let me calm down. The second point I would like to make is that, see, we're not rejecting inductive arguments. Of course we're not. You're forgetting the inductive method, the scientific method. Do you know where it came from, sir? Do you know where it came from?
I know, in fact, there's a remarkable scientific mathematical tradition in the Arab world, if that's what you're going to talk about.
I'm going to talk about Ibn al-Haytham in his book on
sure.
optics.
Yeah.
Read the works of David Lindbergh and others, historians of philosophy and science. And they say it came from Islam. You know why? Because Islam doesn't reject...
No, they came from the Arab world. They didn't come from Islam.
Well, let me give you the link. Let me give you the link. Okay? أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Have you not seen empiricism, the creative thing like a camel, and how it was formed or how it was created? This was the basis and this was the poetic justification for the entire scientific method. As Muslims, we go where the science takes us. But we're not stupid. Deductive arguments, they are necessarily true. If you wanted to discuss my argument, you had to break down the premises, which you didn't. You just talking about the infinite and the circle and the circumference. I knew we were going to do this because it's all mathematics. You remember what I said?
No, it's a physical circle.
Yeah, but let me make a point. I said the quantifiable infinite cannot be actualized in the physical world, something that you agreed with. 1 second. And I said there's nothing wrong with the qualitative infinite. And qualitative infinites can exist infinitely. For example, mathematicians discuss. Yes, so where's the infinite there? That's
Measure the length. You think this is a length is a physical quantity?
that is
Length a physical quantity.
That is, yeah.
Okay, the length of this and the length of that, okay, the ratio of those two lengths is an infinite number.
Yes, of course it is.
Okay,
But
great.
what is that length? What is that length?
1. This is the length 1. Is 1 Krauss.
Okay, can you...
These are pi Krauss.
1 second. Can you measure the straight line and can you measure the circumference? Yes or no?
I can measure it.
Well, that's quantifiable.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is in the realm of mathematical realm of discourse, which has axioms and conventions, which makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm agreeing with what you already agreed with in your own book, which from a quantifiable, discrete perspective, you can't have an infinite. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Discrete.
The discrete
But
parts.
who says it has to be discrete?
Oh, but that's your presupposition. That's your
No,
presupposition.
actually-
You brought your assumptions, Fox News, by the way,
No,
and other stuff, and you think you've got an answer.
No.
I have time. Let me finish this, please.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I got to teach you different calculus. Newton invented a long
Yeah,
time
I know,
ago.
but calculus is based on axioms and conventions in the mathematical realm of
It
discourse.
describes how things work.
Yes. Let me make a point. So, that's the first point. Oh, dear. Okay, then you spoke about, for example, 0 is simple as Occam's razor. Again, you've misconstrued what Occam's razor is. Occam's razor is not only the simplest explanation, but it has to have greater explanatory scope and explanatory power. 0 has no explanatory scope or power concerning the origins of the universe from that
I'll
perspective.
explain it how it does.
The other point I like to make is you spoke about, for example, hell and justice, and look at all these people that are going to hell. Again, another huge straw man. You've misrepresented Islamic theology. We have a very nuanced theology, sir. I think the best thing to do, if you were sincere, you would have said, you know, Hamza, I don't get this. I haven't read this before. I'm just making my own mind up because I watch videos of Christopher Hitchens and he's an authority to me. I don't know much. Can you tell me what Islam says about this issue? That would have been better, wouldn't it? But again, it's a straw man. And when it comes to things like hell, we believe God is all just and all merciful, okay? No one disagrees with the concept of punishment, okay? You're not going to disagree with the concept of punishment, are you? So when it comes to people who haven't heard about Islam, there's a whole array of theologians like Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Ghazali who said that there's going to be another form of justice for them. They may be tested on the Day of Judgment based on other prophetic traditions. It's not as simple as that. Okay, homosexuality is a sin. Again, you try to put words in my mouth, and that's not nice. That's not nice.
I asked you questions. I didn't.
You did, but then after you try to answer them for me, which is quite interesting. Now, see, we don't believe homosexual tendencies per se are sinful. It's the manifestation of the homosexual act in public is sinful. Because we believe in our theology. Let me just make the point that we're given a package. We all have tendencies. People have tendencies, the polygamous, for example, or other people have tendencies that may be seen negative or taboo. Other people have tendencies concerning various different things. And we believe this is a package that God has given us. But we have an empowering philosophy which says that God, when He gives you these tendencies, whatever they are, whatever kind of inclinations we have, we use our aql, our intellect, by understanding the divine reality and what He wants from us, because God would know me better than I know myself. And He would say, fine, you have these tendencies. This is how you shape them. This is how you control them. Like, we don't believe in, we should be agitated purely based on the bestial aspects of man, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual. And by the way, saying off to your mother is equivalent major sin as being a homosexual. So the point I'm trying to say is we don't condemn people per se. We don't say, I'm going to kill you. We appreciate every human being. They have spiritual needs, but we're not gonna make up our own religion. We're not gonna follow the Kraussian religion, whatever he says. We're gonna follow the divine reality. If he says homosexuality is a sin, it's a sin. Just like drinking alcohol is a sin for the Muslim, or for example, being harmful to human beings is a sin. Right? Just because I have a tendency and I'm a martial artist and I want to harm people, does that mean now God is wrong just because I have that tendency? I mean, that's not right. Anyway, I'm still looking for some strong counter arguments you made to my points.
There were no points to actually make any counter arguments.
Well, there were, because you didn't. Okay, let's put it simply.
Infinity doesn't exist. Yes, it does. Okay.
You didn't. No, I said the quantifiable infinite doesn't exist. I agree the infinite exists. Again, another straw man. The point I'm trying to say is this. We have a deductive argument that the universe is finite. If it's finite, it began to exist. If it began to exist, there are some logical possibilities. Please entertain those logical possibilities. If not, it's equivalent to you coming to my house, having a coffee, I'm talking to you, but you're talking to the window. And I know you have better morals and manners than that, because I know you're highly respected. And we do all respect you in some paradoxical way. But the point is, the point I'm trying to say, Professor Krauss, is that I think it's only fair if you want to pick and choose from the Fox News narrative that you actually trying to change that stance and say, right, what does Sharia law say? Do you have a book of Sharia law at home?
I asked you so I could learn.
No, but you were telling me. Do you have a book? Okay, do you have a book on Sharia law?
No.
And you
Because
make
it's based on
judgments,
nonsense.
and okay, I have a book on atheism. I think it's based on nonsense,
Great.
but I give you the intellectual epistemic respect to read your worldview. But you've come here
my book is a book on
blasé,
atheism, it's a
sorry,
book on science.
you've come here blasé, almost arrogant, I don't want to judge you, and saying, it's all rubbish, I'm not going to take any of his arguments, I know better than you, which you said that, and I do agree in physics you do. And you've come here making judgments on Sharia law. You don't even have a book on Sharia law.
That's why I asked questions. I repeat.
And the point is...
Look, I'm sorry. That's why I asked questions. I asked you questions so I could learn. I asked what you thought
Yes.
as someone whose opinions I'm supposed to respect. And I wanted to know,
Yes.
did you think it was wrong? And I wanted to know why. There's no sense why homosexuality is wrong. I wanted to know what common sense tells you that homosexuality is wrong, except some self-proclaimed prophet telling you with no evidence.
There's a different point. Okay. Okay, let me ask Professor Krauss a question. Why is incest wrong?
It's not clear to me that it's wrong.
Okay.
It's clear to me. There's an evolution. No. Listen to me. Listen to me.
Wait. Let's give him the respect, please. He's got a
You
justification.
ask me a question, and if you want me to answer, I will.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Do it.
Okay. The point is, most societies have a taboo on incest, and it's an empirical one. Generally, incest produces genetic defects.
Yes.
Okay. And so in general, there's a physiological reason and a societal one why incest is wrong.
Yes.
Okay? But if you ask me the question, is it, and this is an interesting question, by the way, there's an ingrained incest taboo in almost all societies for that reason.
Sure.
Because societies want to persist, so it works. But if you asked me a priori, for example, the question, if a brother and a sister loved each other and used contraception, is there something absolutely morally wrong about that? And that, by the way, and it was once, and they went off and it didn't affect anything else, I'd have to think about it because I don't think there's any absolute condemnation of that fact. If they love each other and care for each other and they go off and it doesn't affect anything else,
Okay.
Would I recommend it? No. Would I be particularly happy about it? But would I be willing to listen to those arguments? If they were rational, maybe.
Okay, good. So, see, this is precisely the point I'm trying to make, Professor Krauss, is that I find it quite interesting. Someone who adopts an atheist position would have strong moral judgments about a religious tradition, whereas your moral judgments, at best, are relative and subjective. Now, when you look about moral theory, from an Islamic perspective and a religious perspective, you see that objective morals, that even pointing the finger and saying, you know, you're wrong, you're nonsense, Sharia law is backward, these kind of strong emotive things, I think we can only be that emotive and strong in an objective sense if you have God as a grounding for your objective moral values. Because if you take God out of the picture, he's the only concept that transcends human subjectivity. Social pressure, you know that doesn't work. Look what happened in Nazi Germany. You know, for example, evolution makes it end up being ephemeral and empty. If you look at the philosopher of science, Michael Rules, he said, you think loving thy neighbor as thyself is like you're referring above and beyond yourself. But essentially, it has no true meaning. It's just a product of survival and reproduction. So from this perspective, you don't have an ontological grounding for objective moral truths. The best you could do, what a lot of atheists have done, is, well, we believe in moral realism, which is moral truths are just moral truths because they are. Well, Islam just is, and the Prophet Muhammad upon whom he just is, and the Quran just is. That's not an argument. So the reason I asked you that question, sir, was to say, how on earth, from an intellectual perspective, can we point the finger at religions from a moral perspective? And especially today's been, the irony is, most of your articulation against Islam has had a moral vibe to it, not a rational one, because you didn't deal with the premises of my argument.
I did.
No, you didn't. You talked about infinity and...
I talked about causality, infinity, the words that you were throwing out.
Yes, and what did you say about causality?
I said, in fact, that it's quite likely that beginning of the universe causality isn't a good question. But if you understood the physics, you'd understand it.
Your presupposition of causality...
No, it's not my presupposition.
It is.
It's time doesn't exist.
Yes.
Space doesn't exist.
Okay, think about the statement, something produces an effect. Where is time as a definition there?
Produces.
No, it could be atemporal.
What do you mean atemporal? You
Well-
explain to me clearly what you mean in a physical way. And
Okay.
Don't just give me English language. Give me a physical example.
Okay, let me give you, like your nothing is a physical example, yeah?
Well, you haven't described what my nothing is yet. You read the preface, like a number of people did, but I don't know if you got very far in the
Actually,
book.
I read the whole book. I
Okay,
liked it.
What's my nothing?
Your nothing is...
What is my nothing?
Your nothing is quantum.
No.
It is.
No. No space, no time, no laws, no nothing.
But that's still a quantum haze.
No.
That is.
No, there's no quantum. There's no universe. There's no universe. Nothing. Zero, zip, nada.
So why did you say in your own book then that we will reduce to our own quantum haze?
Hamza, can I?
Yep.
Can I?
Well, he took a lot of
interrupt?
my time.
Yeah.
Well,
but
did you?
It's
I
kind
took a lot of my
of
time to
dissolving
answer my
into a
question.
discussion.
So we'll continue the discussion.
Oh, we
I don't
will
plan
do.
to pontificate.
No, of course.
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Hamza. Please come and sit down, brother.
Woo!